Hello, we are continuing with simple machines, and in this segment we are going to discuss levers. Levers, the spelling L-E-V-E-R-S, levers. What are we going to do in this segment? We are going to define levers, or we are going to define what a lever is. We are going to look at the main parts of a lever. We shall identify the criterion that was used to classify levers. Then we shall look at the classes of levers. There are 3 classes of levers. We shall visit each class. We shall define each class and identify examples of devices under each class. And then we shall go to moments. We shall discuss moments, and then we shall work out some numbers on levers. Let's go straight to the definition. What is a lever? A lever is a stiff rod that turns freely at a fixed point called a pivot. We can also say a lever is sometimes some people say it is a rigid bar. It is a rigid bar that turns freely at a fixed point called a pivot. Pivot has got another name. You can call it fulcrum. If you don't use pivot, you can use fulcrum, but I prefer to use pivot for the reason I'll give later. Then that is the definition. A pivot is a lever is a stiff rod that turns freely at a fixed point called a pivot. Part 2, the parts of a lever. It has got 5 parts, 5 parts, but 3 are more important than the other 2. So the parts are pivot, load, effort. The first 3, pivot, load, effort. We shall use letters P-L-E. I hope you will not forget that. P-L-E. Pivot, load, effort. So that's the reason why I would prefer to use pivot than fulcrum. Then the other ones, the other 2 terms are load arm and effort arm. Some people call it load distance and effort distance. So our work is to define each one of these, beginning with the pivot. Pivot is the turning point of a machine, or it is the turning point of a lever for that matter. It is the turning point of the lever. Then load, this is the force to be overcome. This is the force that we are supposed to overcome. Some books call it the resultant force. That's where we need results. Then effort is the force that we are going to use to overcome the load. Effort is the force that is supposed to overcome the load. We can also call it the driving force. Effort is the driving force. Then load arm or load distance is the distance between the load and the pivot. It is the distance between the load and the pivot. Then effort arm is the distance between the effort and the pivot. Effort arm or effort distance is the distance between the effort and the pivot. Which criteria was used to classify the levers? Levers are grouped according to the position of the pivot from the load and the effort. They are grouped according to the position of the pivot from the load and the effort. These are the levers. These are the classes of levers. We have got first class levers, second class levers, and third class levers. So which criteria did they use when they are classifying these levers? The position of the pivot from the load and the effort. We shall take turns to have each one of these 3 in between the other 2. So beginning with the first class levers are ones where the pivot is in between the load and the effort. With the first class levers, the pivot is in between the other 2. Pivot is in between the effort and the load. This is the same. Then with the second class levers, it is the load that is in between the 2. It is the load that is in between the pivot and the effort. In between the pivot and the effort. Or the other way around, it is the load in between the effort and the pivot. Then third class levers, we have got the effort. effort is in between the pivot and the load, or the effort is in between the load and the pivot. Yeah, so it is important for on our levers that we have a longer effort distance or longer effort arm, because the longer the effort arm, the less the effort applied. For those devices that have the effort arm longer than the load arm, you will find that they will be using less effort compared to, for example, the third class levers that have a longer load arm than the effort arm. So here we have got this illustration here. This illustration, this is a crowbar. It is a first class lever. This is a crowbar. Why is it regarded as a first class lever? Because the load, the pivot, this is the pivot, is in between the load and the effort. So they are asking us, where can someone handle so that they can use less effort? You need to identify, you have 3 spots, A, B, and C. So the question is, where does someone have to handle so that they use the least possible effort? And our response will be at point C. That is where that person will handle. Even at point A, you can push this load, but the problem is you'll be using much more effort compared to one who is using B or C. Still, if we are comparing B and C, C will use less effort compared to B, because it has a longer effort distance, reducing on the effort that is applied. The classes of levers, I have a formula that can help us to master these classes of levers. So we have got P, L, E, and then we also have PLE. PLE, we are using PLE because we know it rings a certain bell in your head. Then PLE, then LLL. So I began with PLE and PLE. Then PLE this way, here LLL. So these are first class levers, these are second class levers, and these are third class levers. Or the other way around, these are first class levers, these are second class levers, and then these are third class levers. We have PLE, we have each one of these taking turns to be in between the other. I also had a student called Kiron who said, teacher, the thing is simple. We are going to sit PLE. Where we have the pivot in between, that's the first class lever. Where we have the load in between the other two, that's a second class lever. And where we have the effort in between the other two, that's a third class lever. So that is it. That is the way we can classify them. Let's begin with first class levers. First class levers have the pivot between the load and the effort. That is the illustration we have there. Examples of first class levers we have got here. I'll be using a formula. We have devices that are in the scissors family, and then we have devices that are in the balance family. When I was listing, I listed the ones in the scissors family, the ones which work like scissors, beginning with the scissors themselves, then pincers, then pliers, a pair of shears. These are paired devices, they're in pairs. Shears, badizo, hoof trimmer, those first ones. Scissors, pincers, pliers, shears, badizo, hoof trimmer, up to hoof trimmer. They are paired. Then we have ones in the balance family, beginning with like the beam balance, the scales. Then we have got a seesaw. A seesaw is like a balance. We have a lid opener. We have a claw hammer, a hammer that has got those claws, which is used for extracting nails out of wood. And then we have a crowbar. The crowbar is this one here. That's a crowbar. and then we have got a water pump. With me here, I've got a pair of scissors. That's why I said the first group are paired instruments, like pliers, scissors, etc. This pair of scissors, we have the effort here, then we have got the pivot, and then the load is what you are cutting. So we have got the pivot in between the effort and the load. So whatever you're supposed to cut, the turning point is here, pivot is in between. So all those devices that are in the scissors family work like that. The shears, badizo, hoof trimmer, and the rest. Then we have got the ones in the balance family. Like we have a seesaw. Seesaws are at school. I cannot bring one here, and I cannot take you to one because I cannot move around freely. Then we have got a claw hammer. It's not easy to get one these days. A crowbar. Those ones are usually found with the people who roof houses and construction. Then water pumps are not also easy to access. But what I have is a lid opener. This is a tin here. It's a tin of milk. Then we have got the lid opener. Now, the lid is working as the load. Pivot is the edge. The rim of the tin will be the pivot. This is the load, and the effort is where I'm touching. The lid of the tin is the load. Then where it turns from, turning point at the rim of the tin, that is the pivot, and then the effort is where I'm holding. Now, in case I'm to ask you where I'm supposed to hold, it will be prudent of you to tell me that I will hold at the edge, because it's difficult for me to turn from this spot. Yes, I can, but it's not easy. I'll be using much more effort. Even in the middle there, it's also not easy. But at the extreme end, because we have a long effort arm, I will be using less effort. Hence, that is how the lid opener works. Let's move to class 2 of levers. They are called second class levers or class 2 levers. There are different ways in which they are called depending on the curriculum of those places. These are levers that have the load in between the pivot and the effort. The load is in between the pivot and the effort. We have the pivot here, we have the load there, and the effort the other side. The arrow is very important. Now, when you look at these, second class 2 levers have a longer effort distance than the load distance. Load distance is from here to the load. Effort distance is from here to the other side. That means by all means we must be using less effort when we are using such a lever. The arrangement is PLE or LPE. I hope you cannot forget this. I still remember my P7 teacher very well because of these levers. Yeah, so examples of these levers, we have got a wheelbarrow. Times are not easy. Accessing some of these things is not easy in this corona time, COVID-19, because we are in a quarantine or lockdown. Okay, we have got a nut cracker, then we have got pepper cutter, bottle openers, garlic press, there's even a lemon squeezer, then we have the human foot. We have got the human foot. I'm going to make my demonstration from this bottle here. Now this is a bottle opener. Last time it was working as a lid, now it is working as a bottle opener. Bottle opener is a second class lever. So if I'm to use it, just imagine this bottle has got a bottle top. This is what I will do. So the pivot is at the extreme end. The pivot is at the extreme end. Then the load is in between. Then I'm holding at the effort. Where I'm putting my hand is the effort. So the load is in between the pivot and the effort. Then in case you asked to use an arrow to show the direction, you should be able to show us the direction of the effort, which is going upwards. So you will be opening the top as in like that. Then those are second class levers. We have a paper cutter. Paper cutter is also called guillotine, American English, guillotine. That device that is used by people who make books. Paper cutter. Garlic press, it has the pivot at the extreme end, garlic is in between, then you press at the extreme end. Garlic press works exactly the same way as a lemon squeezer. Those are second class levers. Second class levers and first class levers have an advantage over the third class levers. Second and first class levers usually have a longer effort arm than the load arm, or than the load distance, which helps to reduce on the effort that is applied. And that is why they are called force multipliers or effort multipliers, because they usually have a longer effort distance, reducing on the effort applied. Let's go to the third class levers. Third class levers have got the effort. The effort is in between. The effort is in between the load and the pivot. P-E-L-L-E-P. Effort is in between the other two. This is the illustration. Some of them are paired, while others are not paired. The paired ones include the pair of tongs. There are different kinds of tongs. We have got hair tongs. We have got tongs used for serving food. We have got tongs used by blacksmiths and different people who use tongs. Then we have got a pair of tweezers.